The story of how the United States expanded from its original 13 colonies to its present 50 states is a compelling saga of exploration, conflict, and the relentless pursuit of manifest destiny. This video meticulously traces the chronological addition of each state from the official date of statehood, the pivotal moment when each territory was formally admitted into the Union, earning equal status with the founding states. By highlighting key events, territorial acquisitions, treaties, and significant historical milestones, we will visualize the evolving map of the United States. The narrative will illustrate how diverse political, social, and economic forces shaped and defined each region's unique identity. We will delve into the rich tapestry of U.S. statehood, uncovering stories of ambition, compromise, and unity, while also exploring ongoing discussions about potential future states. The United States declared its independence on July 4, 1776, with the adoption of the Declaration of Independence by the Second Continental Congress. This document, primarily authored by Thomas Jefferson, announced the separation of the 13 American colonies from Great Britain, forming an independent nation. The recognition of U.S. independence was officially confirmed with the signing of the Treaty of Paris on September 3, 1783, which ended the American Revolutionary War. In 1783, the primary states were the original 13 colonies that had declared independence and subsequently formed the United States. These states included Delaware, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Georgia, Connecticut, Massachusetts, Maryland, South Carolina, New Hampshire, Virginia, New York, North Carolina, and Rhode Island. These states operated under the Articles of Confederation, the first governing document of the United States, before the ratification of the U.S. Constitution in 1788. The Articles of Confederation proved to be a weak system of government, leading to the Constitutional Convention in 1787, where the U.S. Constitution was drafted. Ratified in 1788, the Constitution established a stronger federal government with separate executive, legislative, and judicial branches. The Bill of Rights, comprising the first 10 amendments, was added in 1791, guaranteeing fundamental rights and freedoms. These fundamental documents and subsequent amendments had been crucial in shaping the nation's governance and legal framework, ensuring a balance of power and protection of individual liberties. The early 19th century marked significant growth for the United States. Vermont became the first state added beyond the original colonies in 1791, following its independence as a republic and resolving disputes with New York. Kentucky joined in 1792, separating from Virginia due to governance challenges and frontier aspirations. Tennessee's statehood in 1796 signaled westward expansion beyond the Appalachian Mountains. Ohio's admission in 1803, facilitated by the Northwest Ordinance of 1787, set a precedent for orderly territorial expansion. The Louisiana Purchase in 1803, which doubled the nation's size, led to Louisiana becoming a state in 1812, the first significant addition beyond the original colonial borders. Indiana, admitted in 1816, reflected westward migration and agricultural promise. Mississippi became a state in 1817, emerging from the Mississippi Territory during the cotton boom. Illinois joined the Union in 1818, driven by rich prairies and agricultural potential. Alabama followed in 1819, expanding the plantation economy and cotton farming. The Missouri Compromise of 1820 was a crucial moment in the balance of power between free and slave states. It resulted in Maine's admission as a free state to counter Missouri's entry as a slave state, underscoring the nation's growing sectional tensions. This period marked the United States' evolution into continental power, influenced by dynamic political, economic, and social changes. Missouri's statehood in 1821, under the terms of the Missouri Compromise, highlighted the escalating conflict over slavery. The agreement allowed Missouri to enter as a slave state while admitting Maine as a free state to maintain equilibrium. This era, driven by the belief in manifest destiny, saw significant territorial expansion as Americans moved westward, believing it was their fate to span the continent. Arkansas joined the Union in 1836, and Michigan followed in 1837. The settlement of these states was driven by westward migration and the allure of fertile land. Michigan's admission was marked by the resolution of the Toledo War, a boundary dispute with Ohio. In 1845, Florida and Texas were admitted. Florida had been ceded by Spain in 1819, while Texas joined after being an independent republic following its secession from Mexico. The annexation of Texas led to the Mexican-American War, resulting in the U.S. acquiring vast territories in the West, including present-day California, Nevada, Utah, Arizona, and parts of Colorado and New Mexico. Iowa was admitted in 1846 and Wisconsin in 1848, both part of the Northwest expansion. The discovery of gold in California in 1848 led to the gold rush, accelerating its statehood in 1850. California's admission as a free state further inflamed sectional tensions. Minnesota joined in 1858, and Oregon followed in 1859. Both were settled through the Oregon Trail, a key route for westward migration. The Kansas-Nebraska Act of 1854, which created the territories of Kansas and Nebraska, allowed settlers to decide on the legality of slavery through popular sovereignty, leading to violent conflict in Bleeding Kansas. Kansas's admission in 1861 as a free state underscored the sectional conflict that would soon erupt into the Civil War. The admission of Kansas in 1861 as a free state highlighted the intense sectional conflict that soon erupted into the Civil War. The war began shortly after, as 11 southern states seceded to form the Confederate States of America, leading to a brutal conflict over issues including states' rights and slavery. Amidst this turmoil, West Virginia separated from Virginia in 1863, joining the Union as a new state loyal to the federal government. Nevada's statehood in 1864 was strategically significant, providing the Union with vital resources and political support. Post-war, the Reconstruction era focused on integrating the southern states back into the Union and addressing the legal status and rights of freed slaves. Nebraska's admission in 1867 marked the end of this tumultuous period, symbolizing the nation's commitment to rebuilding and expanding. This era, defined by both conflict and rebuilding, reshaped the United States and set the stage for its modern development. In 1867, the United States purchased Alaska from Russia for $7.2 million. Known initially as Seward's Folly, it became an important strategic and resource-rich region. As the United States emerged from the Civil War and Reconstruction, the late 19th century heralded a period of significant growth and development known as the Continental expansion. Colorado, admitted as the 38th state in 1876, marked the beginning of this era, known as the Centennial State because it achieved statehood during the 100th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. Colorado's admission was driven by its booming mining industry. The Dakota Territory was divided, and both North Dakota and South Dakota were admitted on November 2, 1889. This move was strategically significant, balancing political power between free and slave states even in this era. The rapid settlement and agricultural development in the region facilitated their statehood. Montana followed shortly after on November 8, 1889. Its vast plains and mountainous regions were attractive for mining and ranching, contributing to its swift transition from territory to state. Washington was admitted just a few days later on November 11, 1889. The Pacific Northwest's growing population and economic potential, particularly in timber and fishing industries, supported its statehood. Idaho, with its rich mining resources, became the 43rd state on July 3, 1890. Wyoming joined the Union in July 10, 1890, and was notably the first state to grant women the right to vote, earning its nickname, the Equality State. Utah's path to statehood was unique due to the significant influence of the Mormon Church and its practice of polygamy, which delayed its admission. However, after the church officially renounced polygamy, Utah was admitted on January 4, 1896. As the United States continued to grow, the early 20th century saw the addition of new states reflecting both territorial reorganization and strategic interests. Oklahoma achieved statehood on November 16, 1907, through the merging of Oklahoma Territory and Indian Territory. This marked a significant step in integrating Native American lands into the Union. albeit through complex and often contentious processes. New Mexico and Arizona followed in quick succession, with New Mexico becoming the 47th state on January 6, 1912, and Arizona the 48th on February 14, 1912. Their admissions completed the contiguous United States, symbolizing the nation's manifest destiny of spanning from coast to coast. Alaska, purchased from Russia in 1867, was initially seen as a barren wasteland. However, its vast resources and strategic importance led to its admission as the 49th state on January 3, 1959. This significant addition underscored the geopolitical shifts of the Cold War era. Hawaii, with its unique cultural heritage and strategic location in the Pacific, followed soon after. It became the 50th state on August 21, 1959. Hawaii's statehood marked the culmination of American expansion across the Pacific, highlighting the nation's growing influence on the global stage. As the United States looks toward the future, territories like Puerto Rico and Washington, D.C. stand at the forefront of the statehood debate, symbolizing the ongoing evolution of American democracy. These regions may soon reshape the Union, reflecting the nation's commitment to representation and equality. The American Revolution wasn't just a fight for independence, it was the spark for a global war. From the forests of North America to the courts of Europe, nations clashed, empires shifted, and the fate of a continent was rewritten. Fought between 1775 and 1783, the American Revolutionary War was far more than a colonial rebellion. It became a conflict that drew in the greatest empires of the 18th century. Over 230,000 soldiers fought for the Continental Army, with another 145,000 local militia members supporting the effort. On the British side, more than 56,000 regular troops, along with German mercenaries and Native American allies, attempted to crush the uprising. But the war quickly escalated beyond North America. France, Spain, and the Dutch Republic entered the conflict, seeking to weaken Britain and secure their own geopolitical interests. French forces, in particular, played a decisive role in battles like the Siege of Yorktown, where 12,000 soldiers and 30,000 sailors helped force the British surrender. In total, the war saw over 25,000 American casualties and 24,000 British losses. We'll display the global scope of the conflict, from North America to Europe and the high seas, illustrating how the American Revolution reshaped the balance of power across the world. Following the end of the French and Indian War in 1763, tensions began to rise between Britain and its American colonies: Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Rhode Island, Connecticut, New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Delaware, Maryland, Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia. The British government, facing a massive war debt, implemented a series of taxes and regulations on the colonies, including the Stamp Act in 1765 and the Townshend Acts in 1767. These taxes were imposed without colonial input, leading to the rallying cry of "no taxation without representation," as the colonies had no representatives in the British Parliament. This perceived violation of their rights sparked widespread protests among the colonists. In response, groups like the Sons of Liberty formed, organizing acts of resistance such as the Boston Tea Party in 1773. Britain retaliated with harsh punitive laws, known as the Coercive Acts of 1774, which only deepened the divide. Colonial leaders from the 13 colonies convened the First Continental Congress later that year to address grievances, but efforts to find a peaceful resolution failed. By 1775, the stage was set for armed conflict as the colonies increasingly moved toward independence. By 1775, tensions between Britain and its American colonies reached a breaking point. On April 19, 1775, British troops were dispatched from Boston to seize colonial military supplies stored in Concord, Massachusetts. However, colonial militias, warned by riders like Paul Revere, mobilized to intercept them. The confrontation began in Lexington, where the British and colonial militia faced off. A shot, later called the shot heard round the world, was fired, though it's unclear which side initiated the conflict. This marked the first exchange of gunfire in the American Revolution. The British pushed forward to Concord, where they encountered heavier resistance. As British forces retreated to Boston, colonial militias harassed them along the way, inflicting significant casualties. This skirmish ignited the American Revolutionary War, uniting the 13 colonies in their fight against British rule. Lexington and Concord symbolized the start of open rebellion, leading to the rapid escalation of the conflict. Following the battles of Lexington and Concord, the Second Continental Congress convened in May 1775 and formally established the Continental Army, appointing George Washington as its commander-in-chief. The army, initially composed of about 15,000 soldiers, faced challenges of training and resources, but was unified under Washington's leadership. In June 1775, the Battle of Bunker Hill took place, with around 2,400 colonial militia confronting 3,000 British troops under the command of General William Howe. Although the British took the hill, they suffered over 1,000 casualties, nearly half their forces, proving that the colonial forces could stand up to the British Army. Washington soon arrived in Boston to oversee the siege, where approximately 15,000 colonial troops surrounded 11,000 British soldiers led by George Thomas Gage. By March 1776, Washington's strategic deployment of captured artillery forced Gage and the British to evacuate the city, marking a key early victory for the Continental Army. As the war progressed, the political stakes escalated. On July 4, 1776, the Continental Congress adopted the Declaration of Independence. Primarily authored by Thomas Jefferson, the document declared the colonies as free and independent states, severing all political ties with Britain. The Declaration outlined the philosophical basis for independence, emphasizing natural rights such as life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The British government, led by King George III, saw this as a blatant act of treason, leading to increased military efforts to crush the rebellion. Internationally, the declaration caught the attention of France and Spain, both eager to weaken Britain. France, in particular, began increasing its covert support for the American cause, a move that would soon lead to formal military alliances. The declaration marked a pivotal moment in transforming the war into a global conflict. The Battle of Saratoga in 1777 wasn't just a military victory, it was a diplomatic game-changer. British General John Burgoyne's attempt to divide the colonies failed when American forces, led by General Horatio Gates and Benedict Arnold, secured a decisive victory. Burgoyne's surrender of over 5,000 troops marked the first major defeat for the British Army and shifted the momentum of the war. This victory had immediate diplomatic consequences. France had been watching the conflict closely, seeking any opportunity to weaken its longtime rival, Britain. Saratoga convinced France that the American cause was viable, leading to a formal alliance in 1778. France supplied soldiers, ships, and financial aid, critical for the colonial war effort. Spain and the Dutch Republic, both with their own grievances against Britain and colonial ambitions, soon followed. Spain sought to reclaim lost territories and weaken British influence in the Americas, while the Dutch Republic had economic and political motivations, including protecting trade routes. Saratoga transformed the conflict into a global war, with Britain now facing powerful European rivals as well as the American colonies. As the war dragged on, Britain shifted its focus to the southern colonies, believing there was stronger loyalist support there and hoping to regain momentum. In 1778, British forces captured Savannah, Georgia, and soon after, Charleston, South Carolina, in 1780, dealing a significant blow to the American forces. Under the command of General Charles Cornwallis, British troops began a brutal campaign in the South, targeting key rebel strongholds. The southern theater of the war was marked by a combination of large battles and guerrilla warfare. American forces, led by Generals Nathaniel Greene and Daniel Morgan, used hit-and-run tactics to wear down the British. The Battle of Kings Mountain in 1780 and the Battle of Cowpens in 1781 were major victories for the Americans, demonstrating the effectiveness of these tactics. Despite British control of key cities, the countryside remained fiercely resistant. The war in the South set the stage for the final showdown. The Siege of Yorktown in 1781 was the decisive battle that effectively ended major fighting in the American Revolutionary War. British General Charles Cornwallis, after his campaign in the South, moved his forces to Yorktown, Virginia, seeking resupply and reinforcements from the British Navy. However, this plan failed due to a crucial naval engagement. The French fleet, under Admiral François de Grasse, played a vital role by blocking the Chesapeake Bay, preventing British naval forces from reaching Cornwallis. In the Battle of the Chesapeake, the French fleet defeated a British fleet commanded by Admiral Thomas Graves, ensuring British troops in Yorktown were cut off from escape or support. On land, General George Washington and French General Comte de Rochambeau led 17,000 American and French troops in a siege that eventually forced Cornwallis to surrender on October 19, 1781. Following the decisive American and French victory at Yorktown in 1781, peace negotiations between Britain and the American colonies began. After 2 years of complex discussions, the Treaty of Paris was signed on September 3, 1783, formally ending the American Revolutionary War. Representing the United States were John Adams, Benjamin Franklin, and John Jay. David Hartley, signing on behalf of King George III and the British government, represented Britain. The agreement recognized the independence of the United States and established its borders, stretching from the Atlantic Ocean to the Mississippi River, and from Canada to Spanish Florida. The Treaty of Paris had significant geopolitical consequences. Britain lost its 13 American colonies, drastically reducing its influence in North America, while France and Spain gained territory and prestige. The United States faced the enormous task of building a new government, eventually leading to the creation of the U.S. Constitution in 1787. The revolution may have ended in victory, but its legacy lives on. The ideals of freedom, equality, and independence continue to influence the world today. The story of the American Revolution is just the beginning of a much larger tale of global change. Thank you for watching our journey through the American Revolution and its global impact. The American Civil War, spanning from 1861 to 1865, was a monumental conflict that reshaped the United States. Fought between the northern states, the Union, consisting of 23 states, and the 11 southern states that seceded to form the Confederacy, this war involved a vast scope of military engagements across more than 20 states. Throughout the conflict, there were over 10,000 battles and skirmishes recorded, including 54 decisive and major battles that significantly influenced the course of the war. The brutal encounters of the Civil War led to the deaths of approximately 620,000 to 850,000 soldiers, with about 360,000 Union and 260,000 Confederate troops among the fallen. Additionally, countless others were wounded, marking it as one of the deadliest conflicts in American history. Women also played a crucial, though often overlooked, role during the war, serving as nurses, aides, and occasionally in combat. Their involvement was vital to the logistical support of the armies and in direct action, contributing significantly under extraordinarily challenging conditions. In 1861, as America teetered on the brink of civil war, states and territories were sharply divided by their stances on slavery and allegiance. Before April 15, southern states like South Carolina, Mississippi, Florida, Alabama, Georgia, Louisiana, and Texas swiftly seceded, forming the core of the Confederacy in a defiant stand for slavery. Following the attack on Fort Sumter and President Lincoln's subsequent call for troops, Virginia, Arkansas, Tennessee, and North Carolina also joined the Confederacy, deepening the national divide. Meanwhile, the border states, Kentucky, Missouri, Maryland, and Delaware, remained in the Union despite permitting slavery. Notably, Kentucky and Missouri were battlegrounds of loyalty, each hosting competing Unionist and Confederate governments, reflecting the intense local divisions. To the north, states such as New York, Pennsylvania, and Ohio, where slavery was abolished, became strongholds of Union support, rallying resources and manpower to the cause. In the territories, the question of slavery was equally contentious. Kansas, for example, was a flashpoint of violence as pro- and anti-slavery forces clashed, presaging the border conflict that would engulf the nation. The American Civil War was precipitated by deep-seated divisions between the North and South, fueled by distinct economic paths and the contentious issue of slavery. The industrial North advocated for proactive tariffs and fostered a burgeoning abolitionist movement that challenged the morality and economics of slavery. In contrast, the agrarian South depended heavily on slavery for its cotton-dominated economy and resisted any threats to its continuation. Key political efforts aimed to maintain a delicate balance between free and slave states. The Missouri Compromise of 1820 allowed for the admission of Missouri as a slave state and Maine as a free state, establishing a line, the 3630 parallel, north of which slavery was prohibited in future territories. However, these measures only offered temporary relief. The Compromise of 1850 attempted to address issues arising from newly acquired territories following the Mexican-American War by allowing states to decide on slavery through popular sovereignty. This principle was extended by the Kansas-Nebraska Act of 1854, which overturned the Missouri Compromise by allowing residents of Kansas and Nebraska territories to determine the legality of slavery themselves. This act led to Bleeding Kansas, where violent clashes between pro-slavery and anti-slavery settlers underscored the profound failures of political compromises to address the moral and social issues surrounding slavery. The election of Abraham Lincoln in 1860, representing the anti-slavery Republican Party, was the final straw for the Southern states, prompting secession and setting the stage for war. The year 1861 marked the explosive beginning of the American Civil War. As tensions over slavery and states' rights peaked, a group of Southern states declared their secession from the Union. In February, they formed the Confederate States of America and established a provisional government led by President Jefferson Davis. The conflict ignited on April 12th when Confederate forces attacked Fort Sumter in South Carolina. After a 34-hour bombardment, the Union garrison surrendered, marking the first military engagement of the war. This attack unified the North and prompted President Abraham Lincoln to call for 75,000 volunteers, signaling the start of large-scale mobilization across the North and the remaining loyal Southern states. On April 15th, Virginia, Arkansas, Tennessee, and North Carolina joined the Confederate cause, significantly bolstering its military and strategic position. The Confederate capital was moved from Montgomery, Alabama, to Richmond, Virginia, on May 29th, making it a crucial target for Union attacks. The first major battle of the war, the First Battle of Bull Run, occurred near Manassas, Virginia on July 21st, ending in a Confederate victory and underscoring the war's potential length and intensity. Additionally, President Lincoln initiated the Anaconda Plan, a naval blockade designed to strangle the Southern economy by cutting off its trade routes, starting in April 1861. The war escalated dramatically in 1862. Early in the year, the Second Battle of Bull Run, also known as the Second Battle of Manassas, occurred on August 20 through 30, reinforcing the harsh reality of a prolonged conflict. This battle marked another Confederate victory on the same grounds where the first major battle had occurred, indicating that the Confederacy was initially gaining the upper hand. The Battle of Shiloh, fought on April 6 through 7 in the Western Theater, further illustrated this trend with some of the fiercest fighting to date, significantly influencing the control of the Mississippi River and underscoring the Confederates' strong defensive strategies and effective leadership. On September 17, the Battle of Antietam in Maryland unfolded as the bloodiest single day in American military history. Though neither side secured a decisive victory, it halted the Confederate advance into the North and provided President Lincoln the opportunity to issue the preliminary Emancipation Proclamation. Meanwhile, the Peninsular Campaign, spearheaded by Union General George B. McClellan, aimed to capture Richmond by advancing up the Virginia Peninsula, a maneuver that ultimately faltered in the face of General Robert E. Lee's aggressive defense. This series of events showcased the initial Confederate advantages, but also highlighted the turning points where the Union began to capitalize on its superior resources and strategic positioning. 1863 marked a year of crucial turning points in the American Civil War. On January 1st, President Abraham Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation, transforming the war's morale and strategic objectives by declaring the freedom of slaves in Confederate-held territory. This move undermined the Southern war effort and discouraged European unions from supporting the Confederacy. Amid these strategic shifts, on June 20th, West Virginia formally seceded from Virginia and was admitted to the Union as the 35th state. This significant event underscored the deep divisions within the Confederate States themselves and provided the Union with additional resources and strategic advantage. July brought the Battle of Gettysburg, a significant Union victory from July 1 through 3, which proved to be a critical turning point in the war. The defeat halted General Lee's invasion of the North, shifting the momentum to the Union forces. Almost simultaneously, the Siege of Vicksburg concluded on July 4th, with Union forces capturing Vicksburg, Mississippi, thereby gaining control of the Mississippi River and effectively splitting the Confederacy in two. In the West, the Tullahoma and Chattanooga campaigns, led by Union General William S. Rosecrans, secured important strategic victories, further degrading Confederate capabilities and bolstering Union control of Tennessee. In 1864, the Union's strategy shifted towards total war, intensifying military actions. General Ulysses S. Grant's Overland Campaign featured a relentless series of battles across Virginia, including significant confrontations at the Wilderness, Spotsylvania, and Cold Harbor, leading to the prolonged siege of Petersburg. These engagements were marked by heavy casualties and a persistent strategy to wear down Confederate forces. Concurrently, General William Tecumseh Sherman advanced his Atlanta campaign, securing the city in September, a critical Confederate resource center. He then launched his March to the Sea, devastating Georgia's infrastructure and economy with his scorched earth tactics, profoundly impacting Confederate morale. Additionally, the Union tightened naval blockades, severely restricting Confederate trade and supply lines, further crippling their economy. The year also reaffirmed Union resolve with President Abraham Lincoln's re-election, endorsing his policies of abolition and unyielding warfare. This victory underscored Northern commitment to defeating the Confederacy, shaping the war's final stages. In 1865, the Civil War reached its climactic conclusion. Early in the year, the Carolina Campaign saw Union forces under General William T. Sherman march through the Carolinas. This campaign culminated in significant battles, including Bentonville, further pressuring Confederate forces. Subsequently, the siege and fall of Petersburg and Richmond in early April marked the disintegration of Confederate defenses, leading directly to the evacuation of the Confederate capital. This allowed Union forces under General Ulysses S. Grant to capture Richmond, effectively collapsing the Confederate war effort. Days later, on April 9th, General Robert E. Lee surrendered to Grant at Appomattox Courthouse, signaling the effective end of the war. This momentous event began the process of national reconciliation. Shortly thereafter, on May 10th, Confederate President Jefferson Davis was captured in Georgia, eliminating any remaining hopes for Confederate resurgence. Tragically, the mood of victory was marred by the assassination of President Abraham Lincoln on April 14th, profoundly impacting Reconstruction and post-war policies, steering the nation towards a tumultuous recovery period. As the Civil War drew to a close in 1865, it left an indelible mark on American history, reshaping the nation and setting the course for future reforms. Please like, subscribe, and click the notification bell to stay updated with our latest content.